In this show, we're going to talk a little bit about the Forest Hill School District in the past and the present. And joining me today are our guests are Dr. Dallas Jackson and also former booster or president,
Board president.
Board member, Forrest Tyson. He was there for 30 years. So guys, we appreciate you taking the time to join us.
Well, thank you, Dan, for inviting us here this afternoon.
No problem. Well, first of all, we'll start with you, Dr. Jackson. First of all, explain to everybody, a lot of people might not know who you are or where you came from. Talk a little bit about that first.
Sure, I'd love to. Actually, I've been in the Forest Hill School District now, Dan, for about a year and a half as a superintendent of schools. My background is kind of varied. I started off my teaching career a long time ago in the Central Ohio area. Married my wife, Tammy, and we moved to the Findlay area around there as a building principal at the elementary and at the middle school level. Had an opportunity to move up into a wonderful school district up in northern Ohio, Sylvania Schools, as an assistant superintendent there for several years, and then kind of worked our way back down south here to Forest Hills.
Well, talk a little bit real quickly about that you come in here to Forest Hills. Obviously, that was one thing that my parents thought about to come to Forest Hills was the school district and the reputation that they had. Talk a little bit about the differences maybe between the school district that you were at and Forest Hills.
Absolutely, Dan. Previously I came from the Dayton area at a school named Miamisburg Schools, a very good school system. Superintendent there for a few years, we did some very nice things. When the opportunity came up for Forest Hills, I really wasn't even looking at making a transition at all. But the more we did kind of look at what about this Forest Hill School District down in Cincinnati area. Another thing too, Dan, is my wife is a University of Cincinnati grad, so she wanted me to really look really hard at this. But what we discovered very quickly is the opportunities for kids here at Forest Hills. And to be honest with you, for my children, I have 2 children that are enrolled in the Forest Hill school system. Even at my former district, although we did some great things, the opportunities for the kids here were much more than what we currently had back at my former district.
We're also joined with Forrest Tyson. Forrest, you've been, obviously a school board member for 30 years. You're also in the Anderson High School Hall of Fame. and it's funny, I was telling Phil, my wife asked me if Forest Hill School District was named after you.
No, it wasn't.
So just talk a little bit about how your experience, being on the board and the 30 years and the differences you've seen from way back then until now.
Well, essentially, I'm a lifelong resident. We graduated from Anderson. In fact, we graduated in '62, so we're planning our 50th year reunion. When I went to school, Beachmont Avenue was a 2-lane street, and we lived where Mercy Hospital, or the Christ Hospital is now. That was our elementary school, and the current administration building is where we went to middle school. That was, quote, a temporary building that's still surviving. So all our family essentially went to Anderson schools. When I came back I went to UC on a football scholarship, completed that, went to law school, came back. We looked at a lot of areas, but we always wound up in Anderson Township and have been there ever since. I volunteered to be I ran for the board and was just honored to be elected for 8 terms. Went off that a couple years ago, served in all the different capacities and are pretty familiar with the budget and the finances of the school district, and also the opportunities we have for, as Dallas says, our kids. I went to meetings throughout the country. We just don't know how good of a thing we have going on in Forest Hills. I like to tell people I think public education is still working in Forest Hills. It's a good place to live, a good place to raise a family, and that's why we're here.
Well, I appreciate that. And Dr. Jackson, talk a little bit. You said you were here in the Forest Hill School District for about a year and a half. Mm-hmm. If you don't mind, tell a little bit about the district from your perspective.
I tell you, as Forrest just said, what a phenomenal district we have here in Anderson Township and Newtown. Everyone knows that we're an excellent district, I believe. I hope you do. But above that, we're an excellent distinction district. And not only an excellent distinction district, but we've held that top priority kind of at a pinnacle now for 11 consecutive years. We've met all the requirements from the state of Ohio during that time to be at the top of their game. You know, and what I'm proud of the fact that there are only 9 school districts in the entire state out of 614 school districts can say that. Wow. 9 different school districts can say, you know what, they've done it year after year after year for 11 consecutive years.
Mr. Heiss, talk a little bit. You know, everybody in the community obviously knows who you are. You're a lifelong resident of the area. You've been active community member, including sitting on the Board of Education for 32 years. Tell me, in your opinion, what makes the Forest Hills District so successful?
Well, we have, number one, good kids, good students. We have caring teachers. We have a very supportive parent base who are involved in the schools, which is very important. And we have a community that is very proud of their schools, and we don't exactly want to be the leader, but we want to be up there near the front, and we want to make sure we have a good product coming out. And we value our tax dollars, and we want to make sure they're being spent wisely.
Yeah, and just to piggyback on that, you know, going back to that 9 school districts in the state, when you take a look at those, and I believe that we have a chart for our viewers to look at, on that chart it shows Forest Hills Schools price that we spend, or the cost per pupil. Forest Hills School isn't an average district by any sense of the means, but at the same time, we educate our students right at that state average of about $10,500, $600 a year. And on these other districts, and they're great school districts across the state: Aurora, Oakwood, Chagrin Falls, Rocky River, Bexley, Upper Arlington. Those 2 are in Columbus. Sycamore, another great school district right here in Southwest Ohio. There are a lot of good school districts here, but Sycamore is also one of those that's been there at the top for the last 11 years, 11 years in a row. And then there's Orange City. We, of that 9, we're the largest school district of that 9 by a lot. We have currently about 70, almost 7,700 students in our district. It says 76, a little over 7,600, but we have a number of other students that go to the Oaks and those types of things. But if you look at that, the cost per pupil of those 9s range from us, the lowest, at the state average of about $10,600, to even Orange City at $21,400. So you can see there's quite a variation there, and I like to say that, you know, we provide quality education, quality program at a very efficient standard.
You know, and I think, just with me looking at this as a former student and a parent, people don't realize, I don't think, all this information that we're going to talk about today. I don't think people really break it down and look at it like you guys do. And so I was unaware myself of how this breaks down and where we stood through the state. So I think it is a very impressive thing to look at when you're not real familiar with it.
And Dan, it's not even just through our state. Both of our high schools, both Anderson and Turpin, are ranked nationally as 2 of the top high schools across the country. They're both blue ribbon schools. In fact, Forest Hills was just in a new report that was released by Ohio Department of Education in a ranking. Now, I don't like rankings, but this new report is saying what's the best school district in the state and what's the worst. We ranked in the upper 2 to 3% of all those schools. Of the 614 school districts in the state, we were ranked number 25.
Wow.
And we were just hundredths of a percentage point between us and the next 4 or 5 ahead of us. Okay, that's what makes us so special, is we do a pretty good job.
Yeah, that is very impressive. And we're going to get back into a little bit of, you know, all the stuff that is going on academically in the Forest Hills School District. I understand there's a report from the state that looked at the support operations for all the school districts. Can you tell us about that and how the Forest Hills district stacked up on that?
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that. Year and a half ago, when the new governor took office, he inherited a deficit in the state of about an $8 billion deficit. You know, the economy has been difficult in the state over the past several years. So at that time, though, to look at basically how were schools doing business as well, the State of Ohio commissioned a report by KnowledgeWorks. KnowledgeWorks is a nonprofit organization that does reports all over the country and studies. This report actually came out, and it was called the Ohio Smart Schools Report. Basically what this did is the KnowledgeWorks took a look at all the school systems in 5 different areas, as you see listed on the monitor. Food services, central office administration, maintenance, transportation, and school level administration. The cost of doing business in those areas. what KnowledgeWorks did is they found schools across the state who they determined to be benchmark schools. What's a benchmark school? A school that they felt were very efficient in what they did and how they provided those services. Not just efficient, but efficient as far as dollars and cents and how we do our business. So what they did then is that KnowledgeWorks said, okay, we found these benchmark schools and we're going to compare the rest of the schools to the benchmark schools. So let's take, for instance, School District B out there. School District B, if you did what the benchmark School District A has done, then it shows that you could conceivably save 16, 17% of that budget, maybe $100,000. So they did that across the state. What this report showed was that there could be a potential savings in public education in just these 5 areas of about $2 billion. So it gave the school district something to look at. And once we got that report and we started looking at our data, it was amazing what we discovered. That Forest Hills was actually a benchmark school on this report. In food services, it showed that we were a 0. Now, what does a 0 mean? Well, it just means it's a starting point. But other districts were compared to us and said, okay, in food services, District B out here, you can save 15%. Well, you can see what our rating is there. 0 in food service, 0 in our central administration cost of doing business. We ranked a 0 or a benchmark school in our maintenance services. And in transportation, it showed we could, through some changes, maybe save up to 1/100% of that budget. Well, by the way, we've made some changes already. And then in school level administration, it showed that we could save less than 2% of that entire budget. I like to explain that, by the way, Dan, by simply saying we at Forest Hills use our assistant principals just a little differently than a lot of the other districts, especially the ones that I've been familiar with. We use our assistant principals at each of our building as our special education case coordinators of that building. So they wear 2 hats. They're the assistant principal by day, so to speak, and one of my assistant principals told me that I'm the special education case coordinator at night. A lot of work involved in that. So I feel very confident that that extra 2% that we might be able to save is really not there, because if I were to do any reductions, any further reductions in that department as well, we would have to replace those positions with someone. So I feel very confident, but we're a benchmark school pretty much across the way.
Yeah, that is a pretty impressive thing all through the whole school district. And Forrest, if you could just talk a little bit, I myself not sure how that all works as far as budget goes and what you got to do with the budget. Can you talk a little bit about how that maybe works from from the state, or from how you get that? Because obviously when we look at some of these charts that we're going to see, there's some fluctuation going on, and where we have to be as for a school district.
Well, the state, the school districts get funds from 3 sources. Federal government, very small, special projects. They like to start projects, then they don't give any funding later on. The state of Ohio used to give us approximately 40% of our budget. I think it's now down to about 33% of our budget. So then comes down to the local taxpayers, the local citizens here deciding what kind of schools do they want for their kids. So that's where we are in as far as the mix of those things, of where the money comes from. Where it's spent, approximately 85% of our budget is spent on personnel. You have a teaching educational, and that's where you spend your money. Part of it's for transportation, food service, maintenance, all those items, and then to maintain the schools themselves. In Forest Hills, we don't have a permanent improvement levy, a tax, but the board many years ago set up a fund where we'd use the interest on our earnings, that is on our cash balance, our reserves, to go and put in to maintain the buildings, which has resulted in over $20–25 million worth of improvements. But I think last year, Rick Tepper, our treasurer, had told the board last year they received $1 million, the last 2 years, $1 million of interest on our funds. Last year it was $40,000. So that had just cut back what the district can do on their various projects. And the board has to decide what they want to do in the future. We don't have brand new buildings like a Mason or some of the other districts, but we have well-maintained buildings. They're safe, and a lot of stuff goes on in them, including all the extracurriculars, the
Right.
co-curriculars, things that we talk about the academics, we talk about operating efficiencies, but we should really talk about the opportunities for the kids in our district. And the teachers have been cut, our staff have been cut by over 10%, 82 staff positions, 43 of them are teachers. And that's where if you've got to cut, that's where the money comes from. Because the other 15%, yeah, you can nickel dime it, but you're not going to get the big budget items that you really need, the board needs to cut if this levy, or if the funds aren't there from locally or state. The state of Ohio, I attacked every representative we've had over the 30 years I was on the board. I've been through 6 educational governors. Everybody talks it, but only the local schools, the local community is the one that decides what they want for their kids. I say the state of Ohio does 3 things. It educates, it medicates, and it incarcerates. Incarcerates, the prisons, they're going to be where they are. Medicaid is out of control. That's where most of the money of the state of Ohio is. Education, as the governor's doing, is cut the budget. He has no choice, but there's nothing done. It's really up to the local citizens to decide what kind of schools and what they're going to support.
Yeah, Dan, just to add on to that, I think there's a chart that we can look at to show what Forrest was talking about. As he said, on this particular chart, the red line at the top, that's our expenditures. And you can see that over the last couple of years, as Forrest has said, we've made some significant reductions in the way we do business. We've actually made about $6.5 million in those reductions per year over the last couple of years. And those are going to be carried forward. And so you can see on this particular chart that that red line is going down a little bit. Will that always happen? No. Expenses, just like in your home, keep going up and up and up. But we've been able to control the controllables. The green line is what we have no control over. The green line is what happened, as Forrest said, after the new biennial budget that we're living under right now as well as next year. Our cuts to Forest Hill school system from the state was over 30% of what they funded to us. That was over nearly $6 million that we had not necessarily anticipated. Now, did we know that the state was going to look at cutting budgets? Sure we did. In fact, Rick Teffer, our treasurer, even went as far, he and I had planned on, okay, what if we were even to take a 15% cut? And we were pretty confident that we could do even okay with a 15% cut. But then along comes the results, and we were cut 19% this year and an additional 11% for next year. That 30% will be off our books from here on out, pretty much. Okay, that's what that chart showed us. And as Forrest said, what have we done? We've cut 10% of our staff. That's 82 positions. Actually, it was well over 100 staff because not all of our staff are full-time people, but 82 full-time positions. And Forrest, as you know, over half of those were teachers and administrators. Our classroom sizes right now, our teacher-to-pupil ratio is higher now than it's been in the last 10 years. Our teachers have adjusted. They're working harder. They're working smarter, but they're very stretched.
As you can see clearly, the district has taken significant steps to reduce the spending, and the state cut was extreme. So what is the bottom line of all this? What does that mean?
Well, the bottom line is simply this: is that even as best as we can plan, and with the reductions that we have currently made, the bottom line is this. We started this year, and I think we have a graphic to show this as well. We started this school year with about $11.7 million in carryover revenue from last year. The state comes along, cuts us that revenue stream, and now it looks like we're going to be finishing this year at just a little over $7 million. We'll start next year with that $7 million, and if nothing changes, and we've already, as we've said, cut pretty much to the bone, we'll finish next year with a carryover of just a little over $1 million. But 1 year from now when we start that school year, we'll start that school year with that million, and it looks like we'll be finishing that year with about a $6.5 million deficit. And then it goes the next couple years in our 5-year forecast. It shows just potential losses from that point on. Well, what does that mean? Well, that chart came right off of our 5-year forecast that was presented to the Ohio Department of Education in October. We do that, we update that periodically throughout the year, but that's the big one. The state takes that, they look at it, they look at that bottom line and they say, wow, you've got 3 years where it looks like you're going to be in the red. Well, the state doesn't allow a school district to operate in the red. So what they do is they basically, after a long letter to Rick and myself, say, okay, you're going to be in the red in the next, in 3 years out here, what you going to do about it? And unfortunately, there's only a couple things that we can do. We can take a look at further reductions, or we can go to our community and ask our community for some possible additional support. Or actually, there's two things. Another thing you can do as well. That's both, and that is what the board recently decided to do. Is that knowing that we have come off of a failure of a levy in 2009, and that's what perpetuated the reductions and making this thing last even longer. The last time that Forest Hills passed an operating levy was in 2006. In 2006, that levy was supposed to generate revenue for the district for basically 3 or 4 years or so. We've now taken that 3-year levy and have stretched it 6 years. And how did we stretch it? By what I've said we've done. We've looked at our expenses, we've curbed them, we've negotiated contracts with our labor organizations, as well as looking at how we have negotiated energy consumptions and those, I mean, you name it, we've just done a variety of different things, working outside our district with other school systems and other entities as well. So I guess that's what it comes down to, is the fact that the board recently, and I think we have a graphic of this as well, has decided to place on the ballot an operating levy, a 3.9 mil operating levy that will turn those red numbers into the black. And that 3.9 mil levy is not all that we are needing. So it's still up to me and my administration to reduce another $1 million to $1.5 million out of the budget over the next time frame as well. So that's sort of where we are. I like to tell people that, you know, with that particular operating revenue, for a $100,000 property, it would be about $120 per year. $200,000 property, $240 per year. That's what the board has decided to do, as well as those reductions that I'm going to be expected to make.
And I'm sure that you've probably been asked this question quite often. What would a $6.5 million reduction look like for the schools?
Well, it would be, quite frankly, it'd be pretty devastating. As I said earlier, we're pretty lean and mean right now as a school system. We're still doing an excellent job. Our teaching staff and our administrators and all of our staff, from our drivers, our custodians, our cooks, they all do a wonderful job. They all work really hard at making connections with children, and that's what's really important. But $6.5 million taken out of our budget right now would mean basically a variety of different things. I put together a list of some things that we would have to take a serious look at, and it wouldn't just be picking 1 or 2 or 3 of these items. It would be basically looking and devastating many of them. You know, we're looking at after-school programs, athletics. We would be looking at such things as simply eliminating or reducing to almost elimination the music, the arts, the PEs and those non-required subjects at the elementary and the middle school level. It would be looking at our own busing here in our district, and I know that's you know, it's taboo. But you know what? It would be a savings for us to look at kind of moving more towards a state minimum in busing. If it literally all said and done, all the different programs that we would have to look at, $6.5 million would primarily be about somewhere between 100 and 150 positions in our district. If you think at that another way, that would be like taking all of our teaching staff out of 2 of our elementaries.
Wow.
And then spreading everybody else around. Now, of course, we wouldn't do it at just the elementaries. It would go from high school and middle school as well. But that's what 150 positions would be. It would be approximately 25% more people that would be gone. And you think about what program would not be affected, they all would be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're seeing that, unfortunately, with some of the other school districts around the area that have hit them hard, and you're seeing some that are trying to get back of things that they've lost. So it's definitely been a difficult thing for some of the school districts around here. And as I said before, that's one of the things that why my parents brought me here, or into this school district, was because of the school district. And I mean, it's got to be for you guys. It has to be a proud thing when you hear people talk about the school district.
Absolutely, and the opportunity for the kids. I've heard from let's not really support the schools because the state has declared the funding system unconstitutional 5 different times, yet the state of Ohio has done nothing essentially to provide a reasonable, reliable source of funding for the schools. You want local control of your schools, at least most people, although state and continually gives mandates to the schools so that they don't back up with any money, or they give you a little bit of money and then they stop the money and you're still expected to provide the services. But as Dallas says, you eliminate staff. That's why I'm involved, is that I'm worried about shortchanging the kids we have. We only have them for a 12 or 13-year period. They come through the system. They can't wait 6 years for the state of Ohio to change the funding system. Their needs are now. Our teachers are here. You increase class size by less teachers, more people there. I think the kids at the end of the spectrum are the kids at the top of the spectrum. They'll still be served. The ones that are in the worry are the ones in the middle. Those are the ones that really need that one-to-one contact with a teacher. You and I both had teachers that we admire, coaches that we had. That's what makes schools important in our area. And I just think schools, I believe, are a mirror image of the communities they serve. We're sort of smug about it, I think, in Forest Hills. Hey, we got great schools. We may not want to pay for them, but we've got great schools. Don't you dare take those things away from us. We are right at the precipice of falling off there and saying, if Dallas and the board has to go through and to make those cuts, you won't recognize the Forest Hill school system. And as other districts have shown, once you eliminate a program, it's heck to get it back. It's heck to get those people back in place that you rely on, that they have to go other places. And it's just, what do you do at that point? So I don't think the district and our community can afford to let that happen.
And it has a special place in my heart, obviously, is that, I've graduated from Anderson High School. My son graduated from Anderson High School, and now I've recently got remarried, and my stepson is at Nagel right now, and he is a special needs child, and so that is a very special thing for me as a member of the community, that is something that could be affected, I would think, as well. And it's disheartening because I see him every day when he comes home and how he talks about his teachers and he talks about his, and if for that to be cut really is going to affect those kids too as well. So I think it is very important that people out there, like myself, I was the jock that didn't really understand all this stuff. Now I understand it and how important it is for me because of the education that I received at Anderson High School.
Also, the value of your home, the value of the homes. I mean, I know this economy saying, well, hey, I don't plan on moving. I can't move if I want because I can't sell my home. Nobody can buy it. Nobody can get financing. But if you would compare the homes in our community compared to the homes in our neighboring communities, our values are still there. They've not gone down as much as everybody else, and the schools act as a magnet for people to come here. If you want to have a good place to raise your kids, a good place to live, we've got a lot to offer here in Forest Hills, and that's why people come, I think, and they sacrifice to come here and put their kids in our schools, and we appreciate that. But I think it's up to the community to decide, okay, we really need to support these in a time of need.
I agree, and I think the community, is close knit, and I think that. It's a good thing, but I really do appreciate. I don't know if you guys have any last words that you guys want to say or anything before, but we got to start wrapping this up. Sure. I don't know if you got anything else.
Yeah, Dan, I guess I just would like to leave kind of on a positive note. Positive note meaning that Forest Hill system is a phenomenal system, and we're continuing looking to do even things better and better. Yes, we're fiscally conservative. Yes, we're trying to tighten our belts any way we can, and I'm going to continue to do that. But on top of that, we're looking at other opportunities for kids. I most recently spent some time at the University of Cincinnati talking to that group in regards to how can we work together to provide different opportunities for our kids, for Forest Hills kids, with dual credit opportunities or some blended curriculum. Wouldn't it be nice if some of our children had an opportunity to maybe take a Mandarin Chinese class or maybe an American Sign Language class or something like that? Wouldn't it be nice if some of our kids could have an opportunity at the high school level to take a class taught by either a University of Cincinnati teacher or our own professional staff with the assistance of the UC and get college credit for that class? Those are things that we're looking at and we're going to continue to pursue. But unfortunately, we're at this kind of this fork in the road, so to speak. And as Forrest said, we have a phenomenal school system. It would be very, very difficult to lose professional staff any way you look at it, but who's going to hurt is our kids.
Right.
And so, thank you so much.
No,
for
I
inviting us
appreciate it.
here
I really
today.
do. I know you guys got a busy schedule. I appreciate you taking the time to enlighten me, let me know about it, but also the community out there so they know what's going on. I appreciate Phil Sinkovich helped us out too. I got to make a shout out to him real quick. So him, and then also John Raymond, who also is another former Anderson High School graduate in the district. His kids went through there too. So, and everybody here at the studio. So we do appreciate your guys' time.
Good.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate
I
it.
appreciate it.
Take care.
So for Dan Albers and Dr. Dallas Jackson and Forrest Heiss, you've been watching Forest Hills Live.